So I'm recording this now so that we can,
Student.
but the way to start with the final report is with an outline. And the outline that you want to start putting together, and we'll talk about that today, should be based on the structure. All right, so when you're doing your outline, get that piece of paper out or on your computer, whatever you're more comfortable with, and really start saying, okay, what's going to go here? What's going to go here? What's going to go here? All right, that once you can see how that structure is and what is going to go into each section, that's going to, all that's going to be left after that is obviously the writing of it, but then the research, because you are going to have to do some research on this. All right, so I want to cover that as well today. Like, you know, where do you look for the information you need in order to be able to have what should be, you know, a realistic report. I mean, again, I want you guys to be thinking about this in terms of, we're going to have a cricket team next year. Okay, that I mean, like, really focus in on presenting something that would be convincing and persuasive to actually have this project realized. And who knows, maybe one day it'll happen. But it really, if you go in with the right attitude, treating this realistically, I think you'll find it much easier to gather the information and to be persuasive, right? If you believe in the project, it's much easier to persuade other people to believe in it, as opposed to a project that you just don't care about. All right, so there's only 3 of you here at this point, but let's get started, and hopefully this will record so the others can look it over when they have a chance. So tell you what, let's start off by, again, looking at the structure. All right, let's go through this piece by piece. It's a bit repetitive, and it's repetitive in terms of what's already been posted, videos that have been posted already. And of course, you have access to the PowerPoints, but you know, refresher as we get ready and closer to when this is going to have to be submitted. Okay, so again, this is there we go. This PowerPoint is obviously up on Omnivox, as you're aware. Let's get to. Okay, so here's what you really want to be focused on. All right, because this is your basic structure. Actually, I think there's. Hold on, because I have 2 of these. There's another one. All right, bear with me. I'm going to go and find the other one. I think. I just have too many things up on my. Okay, hold on. PowerPoints. Okay, let's go find it this way. And bear with me. I know that was the one. I thought it had, okay. All right, well, we'll come back to this one then. Let's get guys back here. Oh, sorry. Just Word. Well, again, hold on it because I think there's a PowerPoint that. Where's the other oral presentations project? Oh, here we go. This one. That's the one I'm looking for. That's it. Okay. Bring this down. Let's try this again. Why isn't it showing up? Ah, there it is. Okay, here we are. Hey, everyone can see this? Yeah. So this is, okay, so remember it's this one. There's two PowerPoints dealing with your final project, okay? It's good to look them over both, but to start with, the one, this one here, I think is, this is the second one I did, and I think it's a little more refined. So you want to look here at this structure. And this is going to be the basis for an outline as you prepare, right? Some of it is really basic. You're going to have a cover page. You know how to do a cover page. On that cover page, okay, this is here, and again, you have access to this. Here's what your cover page is going to look like, you know, for the most part. More importantly to remember that your abstract goes at the bottom of your cover page, down here. Okay, remember the abstract's very short. All right. Cover page, abstract, table of contents, right? Obviously, you can't do this until you've written the report because you need to know where the pages are. Note everything that's on this table of contents. Remember, these, you can blend some of these, put them together. You know, the ones in terms of when you want to have a section specifically demarcated, okay, is things like the budget. Budget is, you're going to want a section for the budget. You're going to have a section on the introduction. The statement of the problem and solution criteria can be in the introduction. Again, coming back to this structure here. You have your table of contents. Remember, you have to write that executive summary. All right. Again, we have a video has already been posted on this, and there's PowerPoint dealing with this. Okay. So you have the main writing that you have to do here is going to be the abstract and the executive summary. Cover page is standard stuff. Table of contents is standard stuff, and the list of figures, right? Because it's just basic. List them accordingly. Right? How you design it is up to you, but I need to see the list of figures. Right? That's what we call front matter. That's before we get into the main content. Okay, once we get in here, you're going to have the body of the proposal, which will include your introduction. Then you have a section there, the schedule of the work, which is, you know, when do you want this to happen? What are the steps that are going to be taken? What's the timeline? You want to give specific dates. When do you want this to be up and running? I leave that to you. If you want to take into account you know, and have the time restrictions and getting it organized. Is it going to start indoors in January? Are we going to start in August? That's totally up to you. But you need to specify the timeline in terms of the schedule. The budget, we've talked about that. You need to put together a budget. Very analytic, right? Just the numbers, but you have to explain what those numbers, you can't, in other words, don't just put equipment, $5,000. Break it down. What equipment? Bats, balls, wickets, Everything you can think of that is going to be part of that budget. All right, that's why when I say you want a whole section for the budget, the budget is arguably the most important thing. This is business stuff. And business people, it's all about money. So you want your budget to be detailed. That's the thing that everyone's going to look at first. How much is this going to cost, and how are you going to pay for it? Right? And you have to come up with a plan for that. All right. Remember the qualifications one? That's your qualifications. Your ethos. Remember we talked about ethos before. Your credibility. Why should I trust you? What are you bringing to the table that makes you, puts you in a position where you can actually get this done? Because I'm not going to take a chance on you if I don't trust you.
Can you give us idea about the qualifications?
Qualifications would be you want to explain that you have experience in understanding the sport, ideally, and again, you can embellish. Right, you can put in there things that maybe aren't. You can use your imagination a bit with this. I don't mind.
We can bluff around with the qualification.
You can bluff around with this, absolutely. Don't overdo it. If you're going to put as your qualifications that you played 15 years for a professional cricket team back in India, that's you understand that's too much. But absolutely. I don't
We can just say that we have an experience when I was in college, I was in a sport team, and we have
exactly. And I want you to take advantage of that. Your abilities with your imagination to put that in there without overdoing it. But absolutely, I have no problem with that. Okay.
Okay.
And then you have your conclusion. I still haven't taken this out. I think I mentioned you. Forget about this press release. Forget about it. That's something I thought I would love to do it, but I think it's just too much. All right, and we'd have to go over the whole thing about what a press release is. So forget about the press release, and I'll remind you that when I post the instructions, you do not need to include a press release. All right, and then you just have you wrap it up, right? Again, you have your conclusion, and then end matters, which is usually the appendices. And as I mentioned to you, that's where you can include more graphics. All right. So as you prepare for the oral presentation for next week and you're putting together PowerPoints, be thinking those PowerPoints could be used, or some element of them can be used in your final report. Or you can put those PowerPoints, if they don't really fit nicely into the body of your report, you put them in the appendices. Okay, so and that way they're there. That's something that those who are interested have more to look at, more details. All right, and I strongly encourage you to include whatever PowerPoints you prepare in your oral presentation to put them in the appendices. Okay, so again, let's just quickly go over before we move on and look in a little more detail each one of these. As a reminder, refresher for us. This is when you're doing your outline, you want to be looking at this, right? To remind yourself what you need to include, right? Because the one thing you don't want to leave anything out. I mean, as long as you've got everything in there and you're engaged in it, you're going to do fine. If you leave out a budget, if there's no budget or there's no executive summary, then we have a problem. If there's no abstract, we have a problem. No table, et cetera, et cetera. These things need to be included. Okay. So again, cover page, we talked about that. You put the cover page in whatever design that you want. I just need the information there, including the abstract. Table of contents, again, this is just a very basic one. You design it any way you want, as long as it's clear. Don't go overboard. Okay. Executive summary, again, I don't want to go over this because we've covered this at length at least twice. This is a very important part of your report, okay? In all likelihood, it's something you're going to be writing after you've done a lot of the other work on the report, because you're summarizing. You can't summarize something until you have it. So keep that in mind. Same thing with the abstract. Chances are you can start writing this as you're doing your report, but when you are done with the report, you're going to want to come back and I probably modify both the executive summary and the abstract. List of figures, again, depending on how many you have. When we get to the body of the report, as with everything, most things, you start with an introduction. Okay, it's the first main section of the report. Let's again remind ourselves of certain, this is a guideline for you, so have this up. Okay, some background information. Okay, and remember, as I've mentioned a few times, you can put subheadings here, right? This is introduction, and then we just go through the other. If you want to have, you know, your introduction has this number 1. If you want to have a section, right, for background information, you can. You could put it as 1.2, background information. You don't have to, it's all what you're comfortable with, all right? But it's all part of the introduction. That's why it's 1.2. The introduction being 1, then you can have subsections, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, as you wish. It relates directly to, when we get here, statement of problem. Statement of problem can very much be part of the introduction. This could be 1.2. Statement of problem, all in that overarching idea of the introduction. Okay, but when you have a statement of the problem, remember, your problem is not a problem that needs, it's not a broken pipe on the 10th floor. Your problem is really to take something and make it better, make the situation better. All right, so you have to think about that in terms of how you're going to write that. The same way, and you'll already be thinking about that when you prepare your oral presentation, right? You know, why should I, as your audience, be interested in a cricket club at TAV? Well, you're going to say, let me explain to you why. All right, this is going to make TAV a better place, and it's going to help the community. All right, the problem is TAV doesn't. If you want to really discuss it in terms of a problem, the problem is TAV doesn't have a cricket team. Okay, and the community doesn't have a cricket team, and you want to bring those two things together. Okay. Again, this is just reiterating what I was just saying. When you have second level headings, this in itself can be part of the second level heading in your introduction, or you can make it its own section. That's up to you. Of course, you need to, that's why you can't really do your table of contents until you make these decisions and you have started writing it. That's why the outlining is so important. Right? Before you start writing out your statement of problem, you need to decide, am I going to have a separate section for the statement of problem, or is it going to be a second level heading in my introduction? Because that impacts how you're going to do your table of contents and how you're going to design the whole project. So outlining is essential. Know what you're going to do before you start writing. It changes the way you're going to write as well. Okay, because one will be part of the introduction, or is it going to be separate from the introduction? Same thing with the solution criteria. Right? What we mean by the solution criteria is, very importantly, why your solution is the right solution for this particular problem or issue. Okay? In other words, look at it this way, and I mentioned this last week. Let's hypothesize. We're gonna have a cricket team. You're all in competition as to what is the best way to proceed to get the cricket team. You're submitting this to a committee that's going to look over all your different propositions. and we're going to choose one. So why is your solution, your approach, your method the right one? All right. So it's really an important way to think. It puts you into that competitive state of mind, which is part of the business world. All right. And it also will make you more focused on your persuasive capabilities here. All right. So think of it along those lines, and that's where you're going to have, that's how you should be thinking about your solution criteria. That's the technical term, the formal term. But basically, this is where you're going to explain why this is better than others. And that means you have to anticipate how others may do it. This approach to getting the cricket team allows for enough time to be sure that everything is in place before we launch. Things like that. You're explaining why your particular approach. Okay. This budget may be higher than other budgets, but that will ensure that we have everything we need so that after we start, we have no need to go scrambling around to find more equipment or get more people involved, right? You're selling it. So if we need to spend a little extra money, if we need to delay the start of the team, explain why. Okay. And some of the things you look at for this is the availability of material, right? The amount of equipment that you're going to be ordering, right, from the sports stop, you want to ensure they have enough. Do they have to get it? Are they sending for it from long distance? Do they have it in stock? Or do they have to order it, which could be 4 to 8 weeks? Okay. They have less good equipment in stock. We could have that by early August. I'm just hypothesizing here. We could have that in 2 weeks, but we prefer to get the better material, and that way it'll last longer. So we're willing to wait an extra 2, 4, 6 weeks, whatever it is. And again, that's where you have, you can use your imagination. Okay, that's where you have the freedom to make it, again, more realistic and to bring in things that are not necessarily accurate. Okay. Seasonal changes, you do have to take this into account, right? Because if you're going to start it in January in Montreal, well, then clearly you're not going to be playing outside.
Yeah, it's winter.
Right? So you want to take that into account, which is also very important to remember that in your thinking, you want to remember, we talked about, you have to secure a cricket field where you can play your games, right? But you also want to be able to have practices and to have ability to play on some level when the weather gets bad. So you also want to look for indoor facilities. Remember, we looked at those. We can look at a bit of them again today. But you want indoor facilities for practices.
Yeah.
Okay? You want to be as thorough as you can. And you want to anticipate every objection or every concern that someone who is sitting where I'll be sitting would have. Okay? And it comes back again to your oral presentation, that with the oral presentation, even though it is much shorter and so on, but you want to be anticipating the types of questions that you're going to get after the presentation. And ideally, you want to address those questions before they're asked. It's a great way to think about any of these. Anytime you're trying to make an argument or be persuasive, it is so essential to anticipate objections, so you're not caught off guard. You don't want to go, oh, geez, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't know we were going to need that. Because whether you're saying that in the oral presentation or whether that's the question someone has after they read your report, because if you leave anything out, if you haven't thought of something, then you lose your credibility. And if you're in competition, those who did address those issues are going to be the ones who are going to get the money and the contract. Right? Always be anticipating objections, and that way you can address them. Environment or social impact. The social impact for you, remember we talked about that, it depends on you going to decide how much you want to emphasize the impact this is going to have on the community, the social impact on the community. It's a good selling point, I would argue, because that is good for the community and it's good for TAV, and this is one of the ways that you want to be addressing it. It's good for TAV to show the community that they're very much involved with that particular community, and that from a TAV business perspective is going to, in their mind, say, yeah, we'll get more students this way. People will want to come to TAV. Not just because there's a cricket team, but because this community now knows that we're very involved with their community, very, to some degree in any case. You understand that the kind of thinking there. You want to be thinking like business people. Okay? Plan of action. This, again, this can be a subheading in your introduction. It can be what a section all to itself, depending on how much you want to write. The plan of action is how are you going to do this? And you want to be detailed. How you will implement your solution. So this is how we're going to proceed. And again, if you have a section that says plan of action, the way we are going to proceed is first we're going to think about it almost like a list, but don't put it as a list. I want you to write it out, right? Because don't do bullet points. Or if you do, don't have a whole section of just bullet points. You probably will maybe use some bullet points in your budget, but I want you to write it out. All right, the bullet points and things like that really lend themselves to the visuals, to the graphics, to the PowerPoints. But the plan of action should be written out. The first thing we're going to do is this. First thing is we're going to start the recruiting process, right? Or the first thing we're going to do is secure. You don't want to start buying the equipment until you're sure you have enough people. You have to think of the sequence that you will be following before you start spending all the money, right? You may have done some of that already. You can say our plan of action was to inquire as to how many students would be willing to participate in this. We've done a survey. We have a commitment from 25 students already, or 10 students, whatever you want, whatever it is, okay? That's the first thing we needed to do to make sure there's an interest. We've secured from the sporting goods store a willingness to give us discounted prices if we buy a certain amount, right? That we will return, the favor we're returning is by giving them advertising space on our uniforms and so on. That's why, again, when you did those letters, that was to give you ideas that can now be brought into the final project. Okay, where did you get your data? Okay, so if you're talking about joining a league, right, you need to be able to say the league starts on this date. Where did you get that data? Well, we went to the Cricket Club of Montreal, the Cricket Club of Quebec. Okay, that's going to be part of the research you're going to have to do. And explain, right, the plan, right, you want to explain how you analyze it. We looked at this, and their season starts at the end of July. That's not practical for us at TAV. So we've had to look at another possible league, all right, to say we've seen 2 different leagues, because it'll be very hard to get the students together in July when there's no classes. So we're going to go this way and play in this league, because this league starts at the end of August when students will be here. That's your analysis. You're looking at the times. Mention where you got your information. The information is available on the website of the Quebec Cricket Club or the Montreal Cricket Club. Okay. Here, like when it says interviews or field work, this would be something you'd have to say, we did a survey of students at TAV on such and, you want to be detailed, on such and such a date, make up the date. Right? That's going to be all the stuff. The more detail I see, the more impressed I'll be. So how do I know that 25 students want to participate? Yeah, we did a survey. Okay, good. How do I know 25 people are involved? We did a survey over the course of 2 weeks where we were approaching people in the cafeteria and in the classrooms. We were asking them to fill out a questionnaire that was there where they could express their willingness to participate, to be players on the team, as well as the questionnaire included, you know, would they come to matches? Would they be involved? Would they like to be involved in helping out through the community? It's just an idea. And if you were to go down that path, as I just suggested, if you actually reproduce the questionnaire, 3-4 questions that you distributed to TAV students, and that would be something you would put in the appendix. So when you're talking about how you got that information, and we did a survey with a questionnaire, and then you would say, see Appendix B, which would direct your audience to go look in the appendix at the end of the report to see the questionnaire that you actually submitted to the students. Okay? Again, I'm encouraging you to use your minds and think this as thoroughly as possible. Question?
No.
Okay. All right. Again, I'm not saying you have to do this. You may come up with other things that you want to do in relation to all this. This is just an example of the type of thing that would show the thoroughness and the detail of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think would also make it a little more fun. Okay. This plan of action, okay, and it works well with the solution. If you remember the solution criteria over here, when, you know, how is your proposal different than others? This can be combined to some degree where you outline other proposed solutions to this problem and show why yours is better than others. So you're seeing there's 2 areas where you can deal with that. You can deal with it in both areas or just in one. But you don't have to be overly detailed. It's not like you've seen other proposals. The reason this is important, because this comes back to the idea of the feasibility report, which we didn't do. Right? But remember, we talked a lot about it. And the feasibility report is you would come up with 3 possible solutions. And then you would recommend one of the 3. Right? One of the things we were talking about is if there's problems with making it into a league because of when the leagues play. All right, then it could be something, if you have 20, how many players on a cricket team, remind me?
11 regular players and maybe 2 or 3 extra.
Okay.
3 extra.
So if you've done in your survey and you have 30 students committed to being a part of this cricket team, well, then another option, and you can talk about it, you may even choose to use this option, is to just form 2 teams and they play against each other, because it's not practical or feasible to get into any of the leagues if the leagues are playing in the summer when students aren't around. You have to do your research on that. But that's another option. You can say, no, we want to play in the league. We're going to play in the league. But then you can say, we did consider this. And if you do have 30 students who are interested, you have to address that problem because a team is only going to have, say, 15 players. And therefore, you can make 2 teams, in which case you can say, with 2 teams, we will have them both playing in the league, or they can both play against each other. All viable options that you want to, and you want to, very important, before you start writing the report, make these decisions, right? And once you make your decision, you stick with it. So depending on how you want to go about it, when you talk about how many students are interested in being on the team, be careful. If you say 30 students and you're only making 1 team, anticipating the objections or the concerns, I'm going to sit there and go, yeah, what are you going to, you got 30 players on 1 team, half the players are never going to play. So what are you going to do with that? Oh, you're going to make another team. Good, you told me that. If you don't tell me that in the proposal, if you don't tell me that in the oral presentation, I'm going to be scratching my head going, didn't you think about that? Okay, so think it through.
Sir,
Yes.
I have a question regarding this. Can we make just 1 team as in the letter you have given us as a midterm? I have mentioned about the 1 team. I'm doing the same with the oral presentation. I will be preparing for the 1 team and same for the finals.
Absolutely. The 1 team is what I'm anticipating all of you will be doing.
Okay.
The reason I'm talking about the 2 teams and 30 players is that's an option if you want to do that, or it's a way of adding to this in terms of what are the other, right, why your proposal's better. If you have, I mean, you have to anticipate, if you actually had 30 players at TAV, 30 people want to play cricket, what are you going to do?
Then we have to make it 2 teams.
Right? So, you know, you can anticipate that. All right? Again, I want you to treat it realistically. Because of our situation, if we'd been in the classroom, we could have put together a questionnaire and actually circulated it. All right? The situation is what it is. This is where you have that freedom to decide how you want to approach it.
Okay.
Either way, 1 team, 2 teams, 15 players are interested, 30 players are interested. 30 players, you can still make 2 teams and have both teams go into a league. 30 players, but you know that, 15 of them really just want to, they don't really want to play. They just want to have a little fun. They don't want to get too competitive. Because if you go into a league, that means you're going to be competitive.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be thinking about that. Because I may say, okay, you've got 15 people who are interested. How interested are they? Do they just want to go and meet once a week to socialize?
We can make a questionnaire on that.
Yeah.
Like interested how much, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just like that.
Exactly. All right. And that's exactly how I want you to be thinking about it.
We just have to drop a format about questionnaire, right?
Sorry?
If we want to include a questionnaire, then we just have to drop just a draft about it.
Yeah. Just write up a questionnaire. It'll take, just 4 questions. Yeah. Write it, questionnaire, survey.
Yeah.
And then you can put it
4
into...
or 5 questions, Mike.
Sorry?
4 or 5 questions.
Or 2 or 3. Whatever you think, if you put together the questionnaire, think about what you'd want that questionnaire to be.
Yeah, got it.
Right? So you'd ask, would you be interested in playing on a cricket team at TAV? Would you be interested in going to games and participating in the organization? Right? You're going to need coaches. Would you be interested in coaching a cricket team? Okay. Would you be willing to volunteer to help out with refreshments and barbecues at the games?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah.
Right? So think about that. And again, that's just something to get you more involved and have a more realistic approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Schedule of the work, we talked about this again. You can have a subheading or a full heading for it. That's up to you. And this is the schedule. On August 12th, we are going to have all the players, those who want to play, we are going to set up a meeting. We have already rented out a field for practices on such a date. Where are you going to store the equipment? Right? You got to be thinking about that. You're going to have a number of bats, wickets, uniforms, t-shirts in any case. Remember, when you talk about the uniforms, which falls under the equipment that's needed, which would be also part of the budget, the uniform can be, just a t-shirt with TAV College written on one side and the logo from the sports store that's giving you a deal on equipment on the other side. Well, how much is that going to cost? How many of those are you going to need? When will they be available? When they're going to be available is part of the schedule. The shirts will be available, so we're going to have a lot. We're going to kick things off on August 14th. Okay? That's when we're going to have our first meeting with the coaches. Followed up on the 16th or the 19th, we're going to meet with all the players. Where are we going to meet? We're going to meet at this field. Okay? First practice is going to be on the 21st. First game is scheduled by the league. The first game start second week. You can be a little more vague with this. I may not have set the schedule yet, but you'd have to say that. So if you say second week of September will be the first game, my reaction, if I see that, is, well, what day? So if you just say second week of September, then you want to say, the reason we can't be more specific is the schedule hasn't been set yet. But the league has told us it will be the second week in September. Now, you have some logic here. You need preliminary meetings. You're going to have your first practice on the 21st. That's going to give you 2 to 3 weeks of practices. How often are you going to practice? Once a week? Twice a week? That's part of putting down the schedule. Practices will be held on Saturdays and Wednesday nights. Whatever you want. That's when we have secured the field or the indoor practice place, whichever way you go. Okay? What I'm emphasizing here, what is really important, are the details. Be specific. Again, think like business people. And that's how business people think. They don't want vague. Second week in September, what does that mean? Well, I give you a more specific date. But you know how you expand on that? Okay, second week of September because they haven't set the schedule. Okay, I understand now why you're saying second week in September. My next question is going to be, well, when are they going to release the schedule? And ideally, you have looked into that. They are going to release the schedule by the 21st of August. Then we'll know exactly when our game on the second week of September is. But what I do know is there will be 10 games, 1 game a week for 10 weeks. Games are played on Saturday, or games are played on Wednesday nights. Whatever. Those are the details I want to see in the schedule. Also keep in mind that you need to, this can fall into the plan of action or the solution criteria. Where are you going to store the equipment? Is TAV going to let you, or are you asked? And again, you have a little, you have a lot of flexibility here. Are you going to be able to store them in the gym at TAV? Is that realistic? How much room is it going to take up? You understand all the details that I'm asking you to contemplate. And these details, what this is, even in this really flimsy way that I'm writing this out, this is how you start an outline. An outline is a natural extension of thinking. Thinking before you act. Thinking before you start writing. You take all, if you start an outline like this with all this, writing all over the place and whatnot, then you take it and you put it into a more formal type of outline, where the dates and everything else under the schedule of work, you'll have this section schedule of work, and then you'll have these things that you want to talk about in the schedule of work. And that's part of your outline before you expand on it, before you start writing it out. The importance of an outline. Okay. It's, again, an extension of the brainstorming. Okay, now the budget. We talked a bit about this last week. I'm leaving it to you to come up with your budget. Some of you already have, but it needs to be a realistic budget. Realistic means it can't be $200. That's not going to be enough. And I don't think you're going to be able to raise $200,000, and I think that would be too much. Okay, so what you want to do is realistically look at what's involved. Not just, look at how much it's going to cost, but also part of the budget is how are you going to pay for it. You come up with a budget of, say, $15,000. What does that include? That $15,000 includes the equipment, obviously, the uniforms, the rental of the field, the rental of the practice field. Maybe if you're going to store your stuff and you can't store it at TAV, where can you store it? Do you need storage facilities? Are you going to budget so that for every game, there's a couple of $100 to buy food and refreshment for volunteers to come to have a barbecue? Very common thing in sporting events. Okay, especially youth sports or college sports. You want to get detailed with the budget. And that means very much when you're putting this budget together, you break it down, you itemize everything. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example of how detailed you're going to be. All right, so uniforms. Okay, so we say uniforms, we need $200. Okay, my first question is, what kind of uniform do you have that's going to cost? Is that $200 a person, or is that $200 for 15 uniforms? Okay, I want to know that first. And then I'm going to go, why is it okay, great, looks like a good price. How did you come up with $200? Well, you're going to have t-shirts for everyone. And where are you going to get the t-shirts? Well, we're going to purchase the t-shirts from Joe's T-shirt shop that allows you to put whatever logos, whatever letters you want on a t-shirt. The t-shirts cost with TAV written on the front and the sporting store on the back and a number. Right? Do they have numbers on cricket jerseys? And the number to put all the decals and the t-shirt are going to cost $15 each. Okay, now I have a clearer details of why uniforms are going to cost $200. I don't want to see just uniforms $200. I want to see t-shirts, 15 each. Okay. Is there any other parts of the uniform that you want to include in the budget that you want the team to pay for overall? All right. What about hats? I don't know. Everyone just wears their own shorts or their own sweatpants. All you may need is the t-shirts. Maybe you want to go further. You want t-shirts and pants. Okay. What about your coaches? Do you need t-shirts for your coaches as well? By the way, how many coaches do you have? Okay. Questions you want to be asking. Right? Do the coaches get a different kind of t-shirt? Maybe a better t-shirt? I don't know. Do you maybe get some hats? Okay. Do you want to, bear with me, this is how my mind works. I'm thinking of everything. Do you want to have part of your budget another $200, okay, for extra and different, say, t-shirts that you could sell to the community at the games,
To
sell
support us.
to the supporters, sell them right next to the barbecue and the refreshments. By the way, when people are coming to buy whatever it is they're buying, they come to buy a bottle of water. By the way, for $10, you want a t-shirt, it'll help to support the team. Again,
Good idea.
it is very common. In which case, what you're expressing, you want another $200 for extra and different t-shirts to sell to fans. Okay, how many shirts are you going to get for $200? I love the idea, but I want to know the details. We're able to buy these t-shirts at $5 a t-shirt, and we'll be able to sell them for $10. And all the extra money goes to the team. Okay? That's what you want to be. This is how detailed you can get with your budget. So I want you to think about it. Because in the business world, as you know, money, right, is what most bottom line is what most people come down on. All right, and it'll show me, the level, and show your audience. Don't just think of it as me. Think of it again realistically. That the TAB administration is going to, if you break it down in this way, you can just imagine them sitting there looking at each other, going, "Wow, these guys are really serious," and it's feasible. I'm impressed. And that's the key. You want to impress your audience. Okay? So you use your imaginations to some degree with your budget. Keep it realistic. All right? But it's a very vitally important section of your final report. And then we come back to the qualifications. We touched on this. This is where, yes, you can embellish. You can have a little fun with this as well. And if you don't really have qualifications, yes, I'd like you to make up a couple. I played for a youth team, or, my father was a coach, whatever. But what you're also emphasizing in this qualifications is you're not just qualified because you know the game of cricket. How else are you qualified? What are you guys studying? What field are you in as students? Yeah. So you can say that as a student in this program. All right. I have been exposed to a number of business-oriented courses, budgetary courses, economic courses, whatever, anything that you can use that is true, not just in terms of your relationship and your experience with cricket, but in your experience in organizing. Just because you played on a team back when you were in high school doesn't mean you're qualified to organize it. It does say it gives you some ethos, some credibility in that you know the game. But it doesn't tell your audience that you're qualified to organize this endeavor. What you're doing at school, at TAB, what you may have done in the past in school, what you may have done in the past organizing anything. You organized Sunday picnics for some youth organization 2 years ago. That is a qualification. Think about what is going to demonstrate that you're qualified, not just in terms that you know the game, but in terms that you can do this. Okay? So that can relate. Work experience, internships, member of student organizations, organizing, project-related work. If the work that you do that involves organizing things, the work that you do that may involve interactions with other people, your ability to be well versed in dealing with people, because you will be dealing with people. You're the organizer. You're not just the player. Players don't have to deal with much. You're like president of the club, right? You're the general manager, whatever term you want to give yourself. You have to show and demonstrate that you have the qualifications to pull this off. Okay? And you can embellish. You can, try to keep it, try to include everything that actually does qualify you for this. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of things that do. If you need to add to that, by all means do. That's up to you. Okay. So in the conclusion, as you know, because we've talked about conclusions, it's really when you're drawing things to a close. So as you can see, think about this for your oral presentation as well. When you're at that 6-minute mark and it's time to wrap it up, your tone will change. So as you can see from all the evidence and all the graphs and everything that I've been talking about, this project really has tremendous benefits for Tav College and the community. Right? You're restating what you started with, because you're going to say the same thing at the beginning, right? Because that's your selling point. But when you come to the conclusion, you're going to revisit it. But you always remember that when you get to the end of your oral presentation, or when you're writing the conclusion to your proposal, that your audience at the end is different than the audience was at the beginning, because the audience has now been exposed to all the information that you've delivered. Your audience has been transformed. So you need to, when you're writing a conclusion, you're going to be restating things you set up in the introduction, but you're going to restate them differently, because you are going to acknowledge that now your audience is wiser in relation to this project. If you just repeat what you said verbatim from the introduction, you'll be insulting your audience and insulting yourself, because you would be writing it in such a way as to suggest that your audience didn't get it. And very much so with your oral presentation. Right? Think of it in terms of, so as you can see from what I've just demonstrated, clearly this is the way that we should go. Right? I mean, don't get overly confident, but be confident. Don't get arrogant, but be confident. You want to approach, speaking of that oral presentation, that's a big thing. And you'll be more confident the more you believe in what you're talking about. And obviously, be sure you know what you're talking about. It's the same thing when you write. Your writing will demonstrate a confidence by the phrasing that you do and the words that you use. You'd be thinking about that. You need to exude confidence in order to be persuasive. Okay. In terms of the style, this is important. Please do remember this. It is a formal, academic, technical, neutral to some degree. Neutral is a tough one, because you don't, remember we talked about this when we were talking about ethos, logos, and pathos, rhetorical skills. If you are over the top, right, in putting forth your idea, then it looks like you may not be being fair. So you want that kind of what I mean by the neutrality here is that comes with the confidence. I don't have to oversell this. This is going to sell itself. I just need to present you with the evidence. And then how can you refuse it? That's the kind of confidence that leads to neutrality, where you don't look like you're desperate. You don't look defensive. You don't want to deal with any of the others. They don't know what they're doing. I know what I'm doing. Okay? Now you're moving away from neutrality and you're sounding defensive. And people, at least if they're experienced in the business world, will spot that immediately. And it'll hurt your credibility. Okay. Overall, you want to be rhetorically effective. All right. And I'll come back again. When I say rhetorically, that brings us back to the logos, ethos, and pathos. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes. You'll see why. Okay. You have to sell it, but you have to sell it knowing your audience. You're not trying to sell what? You're not trying to sell a credit card to somebody who is just been denied a credit card. Right? That's a different kind of sell. Right? You're selling in something you believe in. So be careful with that, but it is selling. Right? And they need to buy it. They need to buy into it, because you're selling. In this case, you're mainly selling the idea, right? When you wrote your letters to the sports store, right? Then it's a different kind of sell there. You're trying to convince them to get on board. You're selling your advertising space for them to be sponsors. There is money involved. There's not so much money involved with this proposal. You've already done that. You've already sought out the money. What they're buying is the idea. Okay? Key to remember. And that brings me back, actually, let me just point something out on that note. If we come back to the budget, you can include in your budget that if you want, that TAV has agreed to contribute something, whether it's money or whether it's storage space, that's part of the budget. Remember, this proposal that you are presenting to the TAV administration is not asking for money. You're asking them to approve the idea, because you're using their name. You'll be using, to some degree, their facilities. So if you have TAV as part of contributing to the budget, that would have been something that you've already taken care of, and you'd include it, but it's probably not going to be a big part of it. So don't be looking for TAV to be contributing money. You're getting the money elsewhere, which reminds me as well, what I forgot to mention here, and it's very important when it comes to the budget, is, are you going to charge the players? Okay? This is, again, often done in youth sports or non-professional sports, right? My son, my youngest, plays for football, Sun Youth Football. He also plays flag football in the winter, and they have a huge league in flag football where they have an adult league, but everyone has to pay a certain amount. That helps the organization with the costs. So you certainly can consider charging not too much. If you start telling the players they got to kick in $500, they're going to say, no, I'm not doing that. But if you're asking them to contribute anything, $25, $100, whatever, right? That's why, if that's part of your budgetary thinking, and you are going to charge the players a certain amount of money, that you might want to consider to be putting into your questionnaire. Questions such as, would you be willing to pay $50 to be a part of this team? That way, if you do have 30 people interested, or 50 people interested, okay, that gets a little more interesting because that brings in a lot more money. But of course, then you have to break it down into 3 or 4 teams. Just things to think about. If you want to go in a manner where you do not have to charge them any money, you might say you'll have them buy their own t-shirts. Again, those t-shirts that have the TAB logo and the sports logo, sports store logo, that you're buying at a discount because you're getting them in bulk. You're going to buy 50, 100, because remember, you're going to sell some of them perhaps to your fans. You're buying them at $5 and you're going to sell them, as I say, at 15. And you'll have to, and the players will have to buy their own t-shirts or not. Decisions you have to make. But again, the reason I bring it up is if I'm sitting there on the board, if I'm with the TAB administration, you know, I'm wondering, I want to see how you're going to pay for this. I'm not going to give you a green light to do this if I think you're going to have no money after 3 weeks, in which case it can't be done. Because that's TAB's reputation on the line. Remember, you're promoting this as something that's going to be good for TAB. Well, TAB's reputation is not going to be good if 2 weeks into the season, the cricket team has to fold because they don't have the money. Okay. So styles we went over, and the last one here. And this is one of those kinds, because often I caution my students, and you guys as well, you know, don't be repetitive. But in this case, right, there is the possibility that is actually unavoidable that there will be certain repetition of ideas, not repetition of phrases or sentences. You have to rephrase it. But again, you have the abstract. Right, forget the press release. You have the executive summary. Sometimes the reason it's letter here, sometimes it's referred to as an executive letter, but that's the executive summary. Okay, that the abstract and the executive summary are going to be talking about the same things, as will the whole body of things. So it can, what you say in the abstract will probably be repeated, should be repeated to some degree in the executive summary. And of course, will be repeated and expanded upon in great detail in the body of the report. Okay? Questions?
No.
Okay. Now, you have to be thinking about the length. How many pages is this? Well, the pages depend on how you break it down structurally. In terms of the length, I'm not really concerned. I'm going to leave that to you. Don't make it too long. Again, then you know, don't be repetitive within, right, the body of the document. But I would suspect, if we look at it this way in terms of how long it's going to be, okay, so you have a cover page, right, an abstract, 150 words or so, table of contents, executive summary. Remember, that's what? Executive summary is not that long, right? An executive summary is going to take up half, maybe 3/4 of the page. You know, not much. The main thing is going to be here in the body of the proposal. You know, if I were you, I would anticipate that the whole thing, you know, is going to be around 1,000 words. Could be more. Probably won't be less. But I'm not concerned. I'm not a stickler for the word count. I want you to be specific. The only thing I get worried about with when it's a lot of words is that you're getting repetitive, outside of the repetitiveness that we just discussed. Okay? It's hard to gauge how long word count wise a report like this is, because if you're adding graphics, which you will, well, remind you of that, the figures you're going to be putting there. If you put your PowerPoints into the um, appendix, it could end up having 10, 15 pages. Okay, it's not that it's all written stuff. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. Right? If you have concerns, you can address me. But I'm not putting any firm restrictions on this. I want you to hand in something that you think would actually work. And its length is much less my concern than the quality of the work that's in it. Okay, but think of your audience. I mean, you don't hand in 50 pages. No one's going to read a 50-page report. You do want to keep it so that people can get through it quickly and have a grasp on it. Remember, again, what we talked about before, is that executive summary is so important, because after anyone on a committee, any administrator goes through the whole report, it's this executive summary that they refer to and go back to the most often, because this should encapsulate what this project is about. The abstract does, but that not thoroughly. The abstract is just to make sure, okay, is this been sent to the right people? Okay, but these two, both the abstract and the executive summary, really are important. And I'll remind you again that if you write these before you write the body, the main content, be sure you revisit them. And because things can change while you're putting this together. And remember, in the beginning, when you're dealing with the introduction, right? In that first paragraph of your introduction, okay, be specific as to what this is about, right? You remember, you're going to deal with background information, however you want to break it down. But at the very beginning, in that first paragraph or two, you want to have that one sentence that works like a thesis statement. This is what this is all about. You've already said it. It shouldn't be that difficult, because you've already built a huge context to make that thesis statement clear through the abstract and through the executive summary. Okay, but you're going to restate that specifically in that introduction. We are looking for an approval to launch this and engage this project to create a cricket team at TAV by next August. Okay. Questions on this? And this PowerPoint is available to you. Okay, and hopefully this class is recording, and I'll be posting this later. All right. Very briefly, any questions? I just want to quickly just return to the oral presentation, and then we'll wrap it up with that. Because remember, your oral presentation is next week. So before we move to that, any questions on this?
No.
Okay, good. Last chance. Okay, so the oral presentation. I need you all to do something for me one at a time. Okay, there's 6 of you here. I don't know how to do this properly. Actually, no, all of you. Everyone, turn on your cameras, please. We have to be sure that we're not going to get bogged down with technical glitches. So if you could turn on your cameras now. Okay. I see. Okay, I'm checking to see whose cameras are not working. Okay. Jasmeet, does your camera work? Okay, whose cameras? Well, did everyone just freeze up? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is my biggest concern, is that we're going to have these issues with the cameras. It's very, listen,
And I think the oral presentation on this way, like online, it will be not more like, I don't know why.
it's
It
going to be
wouldn't be
weird.
more expressive, yeah.
What I'm just, the reason I brought this up, and I'm going to just give you a heads up, that you need to all prepare to do your oral presentation next Friday during our class time.
Yeah,
If
but it will be difficult for us to like do this way online.
Well, this is what I'm going to be looking into, and what I'm thinking of doing. I know this is a little unorthodox, but because it may be problematic with all of us on at the same time, is what we may have to do, and I'll decide before Friday, is I will meet one-on-one with you in a different Zoom meeting.
Okay.
All right. And that way it'll just be you and me. I've done a lot of these. I've done a lot of these in terms of meeting with students, talking to students one-on-one individually. And then there's no interference. And then it'll just be you and me, and we go from there. You'll be able to share your screen, come back out. I'm thinking that we're probably going to have to do this because I don't want to get bogged down and we're all losing our minds because something isn't working. I can't see you. Your camera isn't working. If we schedule them individually, then if there's any technical glitches, we can kind of work that out.
Yeah, you can have then a video about it.
Sorry? I mean, is that okay with you guys? Okay. So anticipate that. What you should anticipate is still to be here. I mean, depending on what I say, we'll all start together. Okay. And we'll all start together. And then we may schedule who goes when. But that being said, anticipate that we will be here for an hour and a half. 11 of you. Someone who's good with math? What's 11 times 10? Anyone?
110.
Oh, that's 110. 110.
My mic was mute, so.
My son just.
You add a zero back.
My son just looked at me,
rolled his. A zero back.
Yeah, rolled his eyes and said, "Dad, are you serious? How do you not know that?" So it's 110 minutes. I remember we said it's supposed to be about 7 minutes long, your presentations. Okay? So 110 minutes is 60, 90. It's almost 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours.
So you want to, we usually go an hour and a half. That's what we've been doing for the class. Technically, this class is 3 hours long.
Yeah, we know.
I want you all to put aside the 2 hours for next Friday.
Yeah, no problem. But like we can share screen from my tablet because I'm not using the computer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know that this is going to be challenging. I will take all of that into account. I want you to approach the oral presentation for next Friday as if everything is going to be smooth, smooth, smooth. I want you to approach it as if we were going to be meeting in the classroom.
Yeah, but sir, how should I say? If we have our PowerPoint presentation ready, how do we present you?
You let me worry about that. But be prepared. I want you to rehearse.
Yeah. Like we can send you the PowerPoint presentation on that day, and after that we will just give you the presentation.
Yeah, or you send me the PowerPoint, because what you'll be able to do, and this is what I'm thinking at this point, we'll see how it goes, is what do you see on your screen right now?
I can see you.
You see me, right? And when I do this, what do you see on the screen?
Yeah, it's a presentation.
Right? So I'm going to set it up. I've been told I can do this so that you can do the same thing. In which case, I'll see you up in the top corner But we'll try to navigate through that. But I mean, what that'll involve is the PowerPoints will be there for the middle part. I'll be able to see you full screen at the beginning and the end. And I know that's not the most ideal situation, to say the least, but I want you to prepare as if you were going to be standing in front of
Yeah.
somebody in a classroom. You worry about this, how I'm going to navigate through this. I've got ideas, but I don't want you to be thinking, how do I do this for a Zoom presentation? I want you to be thinking how you would do this if you were walking into an office, a boardroom, to make this presentation. That needs to be your mindset, okay?
Okay.
Questions?
No.
Remember, there's PowerPoints on the oral presentation to remind you. There are videos that you can rewatch about the oral presentation.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at 2 o'clock. So we're wrapping up. If you have questions or concerns leading up to next Friday's oral presentation, please let me know. Keep in mind that the oral presentation is a component of your final exam.
Yeah.
What that means is your final exam is worth 40%.
Okay.
That oral presentation is going to be worth at least 10.
Okay.
Okay, so please put it in the effort with it. Those of you who came in late, I will be posting your next assignment, short assignment. I would argue easiest assignment yet. I'll post it. You have 48 hours. So like we did last time, if I goof up and don't put the instructions there, obviously you get the extended time, but I think I'll get it right this time. And just to give you the heads up on what it's going to be, you remember we talked about rhetoric? Remember we talked about pathos, logos, and ethos?
Yes.
I'm going to just ask you to identify what those terms mean, okay? Easy peasy. All right, but what I do want you to do, because you can look it up, there's PowerPoints
So
of it.
can you remind us the ethos, pathos, and logos?
Okay, let me just double check, because, hold on. I want to be sure, I'm almost sure.
Ethos means the
You have it, again, to make it almost too easy, I suppose. In Omnivox, in the postings of documents, there is a PowerPoint called Aristotle on Rhetoric.
Okay. Yeah, we remember now.
Okay, so
it's that a detailed breakup of.
It's that but please, I implore you, hold on, let me get out of this. Hold on, let me see if it's there. I can't seem to call it up right now. But what I implore you, don't just copy and paste from the PowerPoint onto the exercise. Please.
Yeah,
I know that's tempting. It's so easy. It's easy as it is. All I want, the reason I'm giving this to you is so that you go and you take another look at those terms regarding rhetoric, so you're familiar with them as you are about to go into writing your final project and prepare your oral presentation. So please answer those, define those terms in your own words. It also allows me to look at your writing and everything else, rather than just giving me what's already on the PowerPoint. Okay? I know it's really easy, but the purpose of it, again, I want you to be familiar. I want to remind you about these terms, and for you guys to really be familiar with them, because these three terms and this concept of rhetoric in terms of communication skills are as important as anything else. if not more important than most things. Okay? And the more familiar you are with them and recognizing them, the better communicators you're going to be in the business world and in every aspect of your lives. I promise you that. Okay? So look for that. That'll get posted, should get posted tonight. And then, as usual, you'll have the 48 hours to do it. And that's the last of those little assignments. Mainly focus on your oral presentations and your projects.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. Good.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Hopefully, if this converts, you'll see it posted. If not, I think we're in good shape anyways. Okay?
Okay.